I spoke to students in past interviews about their injuries, and field hockey player Casey Hanna told us about her back injuries happening from being pushed too hard by coaches. What you are looking at now is the gym and facilities where these injuries are occurring. Today we're going to try to talk to some of these coaches and athletic department employees about their thoughts on student injuries and what line should not be crossed when it comes to pushing athletes too hard. Taylor Thrunk is a thrower on the track team and has had her own injuries and has seen various injuries amongst her teammates as well. This is what she has to say about the impact the coaches have on their athletes' injuries.
Part of it comes from being pushed in the weight room to lift more, even though our bodies can't really tolerate it, and to keep throwing. A lot of injuries we see are in throwing: backs, shoulders, knees, wrists, everything. Runners, not necessarily that they're pushed too hard, but I think it's that they don't want to stop even though they should, because they don't want to let their coaches down. Going because you don't want to let them down, and you want to prove to them what you can do. So I feel like that's more of why we see the injuries.
Middle distance coach Chris Torello does not see injury too often in his coaching. He believes running is a lifelong sport and wear and tear will just happen over time. He says,
So I coach middle distance runners. Very rarely do we see like acute injuries where you have a hamstring issue happen. Anytime that we see injuries, it's mostly an overuse injury that happens over time and can really be prevented by the athlete training properly and taking care of themselves before and after practice. Running, I don't see any concerns. I mean, running is kind of one of those sports that people do lifelong. So it's not like something like football where you're seeing head injuries affecting people long term. Really, it's a lifelong endeavor that they take part in.
Some coaches do not see injuries as often as others, but not all coaches seem to follow the mission statement in other sports that see injuries occurring almost regularly. Taylor Thrunk mentioned earlier how her and her teammates are sometimes pushed too hard to the point of injury in the weight room. This goes against what the athlete's mission statement says when they mention, in quote, "Athletics' mission is to provide student athletes with the opportunity to develop their highest level of athletics ability while safeguarding their welfare." Let's see what more coaches have to say about these injuries. Jumps coach Devin Barry sees injuries a few times a month and believes that communication between the athlete and the coach is the most important. He explains in the interview that the athlete must be open about how they are feeling so that they can get proper treatment to move forward. He also mentions his ideas on how universities should be more careful in how they are thinking about their athletes in the long run. Barry says in the interview,
I think it's a combination of both. For me, as a coach, I'm all about communication. So every year in the beginning of the year, I let everyone know that if something's bothering you, let us know. We're not mind readers as coaches. So the more the athlete lets me know what's going on with their body, it's a lot easier to prevent it. But we usually find issues and problems with injuries that could have been avoided that we didn't hear about them until 3 weeks or 4 weeks into the injury, and then finally the athlete can't do anything because they decided to try to train through it. And that's something that we would try to avoid as much as possible. I believe our goal as coaches, especially for the track team, is to make sure that our athletes are as healthy as possible, as balanced as possible, so they can prevent injury. As easy as that sounds, you never know. Everyone's different. Everyone responds to different workouts. But later on in the future, it's very hard to keep track of how people are doing with their injuries itself. I think universities in general could do a much better job at trying to look at the long-term effects of what they're doing to an athlete itself.
Overall, both athletes and students seem to be the blame in athletic injuries here at Monmouth. In some cases, the coaches are pushing their athletes too hard, and in others, the athletes themselves are pushing their own limits for their own personal reasons. Some sports are more prone to injury than others, and some coaches are more tough on their athletes than others. Although coaches pushing their athletes too hard still seems to happen quite often, and people are not talking about it. This might be something that universities should start looking into to prevent in the future through more regulation of coaching. Efforts by organizations have been made to inform coaches about sports injuries. One of these is called Stop Sports Injuries, which is a public outreach program that focuses on the importance of sports safety, specifically relating to the overuse and trauma injuries. It gives coaches sports injuries prevention tips and tools to ensure that safety is their first priority. Students agree that programs like this may be a good start for universities to be able to inform their coaches more to prevent future incidents and injuries. Thank you for joining us in our investigation of athletic injuries and the coaches at Monmouth University.